This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. It's Grace Ormsby here. There's a lot of things going on in the world of property investment. A lot of us are keeping a very keen eye on the upcoming federal election that could play a bit of a role in what's going on, although housing policies don't seem to be a huge aspect of that. But talking through this topic, I was lucky enough to talk to Sadhana Smiles the other day. She's the CEO of Real Estate Industry Partners. We do chat quite regularly, but I thought that this might be an interesting conversation for all those investors out there to take a listen and just get a little bit more insight on what the election could mean for Australia, especially in the case of a hung parliament, a lot of independents putting their hands up as well. So I hope you enjoyed this episode.
REB's The Wire. Championing the women making waves and forcing real change in the real estate profession.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of The Wire, coming to you after a couple of long weekends. It's Grace Ormsby here. Super excited to be back with you, joined as always by the amazing, incredible Sadhana Smiles. Sadhana, how are you?
Oh, that's a lovely intro, Grace. I'm really well. Thank you very much. As you said, 2 long weekends in a row, and you sort of take the time to wind down, tune out, and then you come back to a lot of work to be done in a very short period of time.
Yeah. I think we all sort of thought that this was going to be a little bit of a slower period. Well, I was hoping that anyway. But actually, even in some of the conversations we've had in the last couple of weeks, you know, we're talking about it probably should be a bit of a compulsory stop this period.
I know. I think we talked about one of the things I said, you know, where where Easter and Anzac Day fall so close together, we should have, like we do over Christmas, shut the office down for 10 days.
Everyone just compulsory. Oh, I mean, you need it. It's been an absolutely crazy January, February, March, April, hasn't it?
Highly unproductive, but it will be nice. But yes, it has been a crazy. But I think we say this every year, don't we? We go from, you know, oh my God, it's April and we can't believe the whole year's gone. And I think that's sort of become just the normal conversations that we have with each other these days.
Yeah. If we listen, I mean, this must be around a year since we've done the podcast now, but we were probably having those same conversations. We'll need to check what that actual date was, because we might have to do a little bit of a celebration when it comes to that.
Well, here we are, a year later, we still haven't physically met.
No, to everyone listening, we do have a date penned in the calendar now.
We do.
But it has taken this long to meet. We'll all blame COVID for that, because otherwise it definitely would have happened before now. But obviously there is so much going on in the real estate industry right now, and we thought today would be a great way to just unpack some of those things, what it could mean for real estate agents and property managers and business owners all operating within the space. And I think the first thing we really need to be taking stock of right now, Sadhana, is that federal election. We are seeing campaign is obviously now in full swing, and it's having an impact on the market and the sentiment around that.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, isn't it? You know, we've come off a global crisis straight into election mode, and you know, the current party is probably on the nose on a number of things. I don't know if ScoMo has the votes or the appeal to the voters that he perhaps had a couple of years ago. So it's going to be an interesting election. What I find really interesting is that there's the rise of the independents. I've never seen so many independents come to the forefront, all with very similar platforms that they're standing on, yet they have decided to stand on their own. Some have formed parties and others haven't. And it's an interesting time, because I think what we're seeing now is, as the two major parties on the nose more and more, and particularly for the younger people, they're not addressing some of the issues that are important to them, e.g. climate change is a big one. And you have the rise of the independents who are prepared to put the government under pressure. then we potentially are going to move towards a country that is actually controlled by independents. Now, we've had that before. Brian Harradine was the most popular one that we can all go back and think on, and he did deals with whichever party was willing to do deals with him, and he voted accordingly in Parliament. And it's not a world that we want to go back to where independents control the balance of power, but I think it's the world that we're moving into, and it's really, really interesting to watch.
Yeah, it is as well. And I think for everyone who is listening, the housing policies aren't really what's going to be in contention. As much as we keep rattling on about negative gearing and this first home loan deposit scheme, which is now the new home guarantee, none of that is actually going to play into what actually is decided at this election. So it will be an interesting time. I do wonder what will happen with some of these independents, whether they'll keep that momentum even sort of, is it just a case of this election that they're going to be sticking around for? Do you think it's going to be a longer term trend that way? Will we see some more people, forming these parties that do grow stronger and stronger? I don't know, Sadhna. Do you have any thoughts on where things might be going from here? Or are we just in such a volatile situation right now where it's all a bit free for all?
I think it's a mixture of everything that you've just said. I think the rise of the independents is something that we're going to continue to see happen. And the main reason for that is neither major party actually fulfill the values of these independents. And for a lot of Australians, they're not doing that at the moment, whether it's their policy on housing, whether it's how they've dealt with Solomon Islands as an example, with the China deal that they've just signed on, whether it's to do with the rental crisis that we have, climate change that we've got. There's so many siloed issues that neither party has come out and made, strong statements or policies around. So that gives the rise to independence. And I think the younger generation are the ones who are going to vote for the independents because they give them the siloed issue, focus as such. So I actually think they're around to stay. The problem we've got is whoever wins government only governs for the 3.5 years they're in power for, because they immediately start to govern for the next election. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the independents coming in.
Yeah, I guess that it's all just a watch this space kind of thing. But you brought up that rental crisis and housing affordability more general is a huge topic of contention right now. None of the policies that we're really seeing talked about are covering that. Obviously, there's going to be people that will come on to be able to come onto the housing ladder because of the first home loan deposit scheme and that new home guarantee. But interestingly, Sadhna, actually some research that I was just looking at this morning out of CanStar, they're talking about, we've seen those price caps increase, which on first glance, and it was widely reported as being a great thing for the property market. It's going to really change the game. A lot of people will stop, using that really, really bottom tier of property to get on the ladder. But the salary and the income needed to actually access those price bands puts people outside of the scheme anyway. It's what's the point in actually raising the price caps if no one can actually access that finance anyway?
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of thought put into, when Frydenberg put out his budget at election time, and there was a little bit in there around housing and the affordability issue and the caps that they'd put on it. There hadn't been a lot of thought put into it. And we all said at the time, it was a short-term budget. It was not designed for the long term. And some of the things that they put in there, particularly around the housing, which there's only a handful of, you sort of sat back and thought, wow, that's not going to fix any crisis that we're in. The biggest crisis that we've got is the affordability issue. Cost of living has increased across the board, and wages haven't gone up in line with the cost of living, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So, I actually don't know how young people are affording to get into housing these days. I think Bank of Mum and Dad is playing a big role in that, and they're doing the, $5,000 deposit for a off the plan home that's going to take 2 years to build, and it blows out to 4 or 5 years because of all the shortages that we've got in that sector. And so you don't want to be waiting 5 years to get into a home.
No, and it's that supply crunch that's going to continue to be an issue, because And a lot of the things that were talked about in that budget, actually, very interestingly, the growth that was required and the population increase that's required to sustain this is so, it swings on that actually happening for any of this follow-on effect to actually come through. So the federal government at the moment, Morrison's government, is talking about, we're going to fix the budget and everything, but it's so reliant on all of these other factors actually being fulfilled that it's not very likely happening, is it?
No, what they're saying is that here's a short-term budget. Here's a view of what we might be able to do for you, but we can't really do anything until you vote us back in. So vote us back in, and then we'll deliver on all of these things and do a longer-term budget for you. But I think what really gets under my gander at the moment is that neither party has a vision for this country. We're so short-term, short-sighted. Our policies are short-term. Not one party member has come out with a long-term vision of where Australia stands in the South Pacific, in Asia, and then globally. And it's so frustrating because, that's the sort of leader that we need, is that visionary leader who's going to lead us into the next 50 years. What does the next 50 years look like,
And it would work well. It would work well at this point in time coming out of the pandemic, to be forward thinking, saying it's like that. It's that time for change, that reset that we need, which we've had. It's been forced on us. And I don't know if there's really been any more, planning for future pandemics even. That's the kind of short-term situation we're looking at the moment. But we're going to take a quick break there. We'll be back in just a second.
Creating wealth through property investing starts with getting the right finance in place. At Finney Mortgages, our brokers specialise in investment loans. We know the ropes to get even the most complex deals approved fast. With access to over 50 lenders, we have the know-how and connections to get better rates, improve cash flow, and release equity fast. So, if you're looking for a mortgage broker that gets property investment, book in a call with a Finney broker now. Head to finny.com.au, that's finni.com.au today.
Welcome back to this episode of The Wire. We are in that weird period at the end of April. We've just had an Easter long weekend plus Anzac Day long weekend. Looking forward to, I don't know if I'm looking forward to it necessarily, Sadhana, but the federal election is coming up next month. And while it won't do much for housing, it's obviously having a bit of an impact on consumer sentiment at the moment. We're seeing some pretty different deals going on now that we had seen previously. What's the sentiment like where you are in Victoria, Sadhana? Are there people that are a bit more cagey on the fence? Are there vendors that aren't really, keen to go forward with sales?
Yeah, it's an interesting time, isn't it? I think, and we'll talk about, what we're seeing out the market in a moment, but I think it doesn't matter when these elections happen. Whenever there is an election, people tend to take a breath, and so they wait to see what's going to happen. And I think that is starting to happen across the country, really. We're starting to see people probably waiting until the elections are over before they make a buying or selling decision. Although having said that, we still have stock on the market. So I think, but we do know that people go into a holding pattern. I think we'll start to see that happen in the next few weeks. And I think also in Victoria, we've been tainted by what we've experienced with our current local government or state government. And I don't know if that's going to play a part. Quite often, if you're not happy with your state government, you punish the federal election because it kind of plays through. So it'll be really interesting to see if that happens in certain seats or in certain areas. It's one of those elections where I reckon it's going to be pretty close and it's going to be hard to call. But I've got a question for you, because I know you have a view on this whole preferential voting issue that we have in Australia.
Yeah, Sadhana, I think that with so many independents obviously coming into this election, I think a lot of people don't really see the value. Previously it's been you just vote for the person that you want to see in there. But there's going to be so many deals coming through between those independents and the major parties, whether that is the coalition, so the Liberal Party, the Australian National Party, or Labor Party, and then as well with the Greens. I think preferential voting is going to be so important this year. And as much as we probably do just want to write off this election and not even think about it, it really, I would encourage anyone listening to this to know where they're actually going to put those preferences, because that will end up playing a huge role in deciding the outcome of the election. And, you know, if you're only putting a number one next to your favorite person, then the rest of you, you know, as soon as they're knocked out, nothing will come from your vote. Whereas if you keep those preferences in there, numbering all the way from 1 to 6 or 1 to 8, whatever it is, that will play a huge role in what actually happens with this government, I think, for the next 3 years. So worth doing. And, you know, it does give you more of that say as to you know, what we're going to see play out, which is a pretty crazy thought, because I don't think preferential voting has had that same power.
No.
Gone by.
No, it hasn't, because we haven't had the rise of the independents. And you make a really good point, Grace. I think in the past we've been able to go to elections kind of going, you know, oh, well, I'll just vote for the major party or vote for the guy who's, you know, either Liberal, Labor or Greens or whatever that looks like. But I think if you are going to vote independent or against the grain as such and not for a major party, then you really need to understand what their policies are and where their preferential votes are going to go, because at the end of the day, that really does make a difference. And I think it's one of those elections that we all need to understand what the policies are of the government, what their failings have been, what they've done really well, and what they intend to do over the next 3 to 5 or 6 to 8 years, you know, of government. Because, you know, you would assume that ScoMo and his team will get back in again. You assume that, because whenever there is a crisis, we tend to hold on to the government that we've got. It'd be surprising if they don't. They might get in with less balance of power as such, but what is their vision for the next 3 to 5 years? None of us can really articulate it.
No, and I read a really interesting article a little while back. I wish I could remember the name of the journalist who did it. It was a great profile piece on Scott Morrison, actually. And, you know, she asked him point blank, what's your vision for the future of Australia? And he's like, I'm not a visionary person.
Great.
It was something like, I'm a man of action. You know, I do what needs to be done. Oh, yeah, at that point, you know, and does he
crisis
really do
is
those
over.
things? Interesting,
Yeah.
But I guess just, you know, that's something that's worth thinking about too. What do people stand for, and what are they hoping to achieve from the future? Because there's no point really just ticking along as we're going. Is it working what we're doing now? Especially, I think, for all the agents out there, you know, we are coming into a very, very different marketplace the next few years, and it's going to be tougher. I think that's worth noting for people. The RBA, Reserve Bank of Australia, is looking to raise rates very soon. I think a lot of people, while we have tied some of that sentiment into the federal election and that holding pattern, people are getting scared about what potential rate rises could mean. And we have seen an indication that by June, rates will rise. And, you know, will people be out of sorts? People might be able to hold on for a while now, but it's going to be a very different marketplace moving forward.
So it's a very good point you make. I think, you know, the market that we've come off, and who would have thought that we would have had the market growth that we've had over a global pandemic? Like, nobody would have predicted that. The soothsayers were saying we're going over a cliff, and the cliff never happened. But given the election, given the RBA making noises about raising interest rates, I think the second half of the year, we will be definitely working in a different market. We're starting to see that now. You know, there's reports where buyers were so scared of FOMO, so fear of missing out, and now they're actually holding back. They are fearing overpaying for properties, so they're actually holding back, and you can start to see that in clearance rates across the country. Now, the last 2 weekends, we've had 2 long weekends, so it's a little bit hard to hang any judgment on that. So the next few weekends of auction clearance rates will be interesting, because I think a lot of buyers are now like, you know what, I can hold. There'll be another property that's going to come up. I don't need to extend myself to, or I'm not comfortable, or I'm not able to extend myself. And so that in itself will start to shift the market.
And the clearance rate is dropping below 70%. It has done that quite rapidly, gone back from those crazy 85+% clearance rates that we were seeing towards the back end of last year, it's gone very quickly back the other way below 70%. And while that still indicates a quite positive market, I can see that dropping sort of below 60% pretty quickly and probably holding back that way. It's just interesting, Sadhana. I think, what are you kind of, within your business, what are you expecting over the next 6 months? What's sort of the plan over the immediate?
And maybe I'm the eternal optimist, but I always say change of market is the best time to grow your business. You've just got to understand how to manage that market for yourself. And so, we're a small business. We've only got 420 properties and one salesperson. So we're certainly not, there's major business as such, but we did a planning session last week, and that planning session was all around the market, right? We can't control it. It is what it is, but we've got to learn how to work it. So what are some of the things that we need to do as a business to still be connected to our clients, to still have growth within the business? And we just came up with a real simple, this is our vision, this is our goal, this is where we want to be in 12 months' time, and these are all the things that we need to do. So we will have to deal with clients differently, because not only do you have the sales market changing, but you have the rental market as well. So you've got a rental crisis going on. So you've got a lot of people who are desperate to get into housing who are not going to get into housing, but what happens to them? Where do they go? And then you've got the sales market shifting as well, and that puts our people under a lot of pressure as well. We've heard cases of tenants getting abusive or getting very emotional about the fact that they can't get a property. And so that puts our property managers under significant pressure as well. So I think as business owners, we've really got to not just look at how the market is changing, but look at how our people are treating and engaging with our clients, because both ends of our businesses at the moment are going through enormous change.
We're going to take another quick break there, but some great words of wisdom there from Sadhana. I'll be back in just a second. Welcome back to this episode of The Wire. Sadhana, before the break, we were talking all about, those current factors that are at play in the market. And it would be amiss of me not to bring up the issue that has been a long-standing issue now, but of property managers and that burnout that's being faced. We talk a lot about the Great Resignation and what's going on. But, that 23% of people that are looking to leave the industry is something that keeps sticking with us, and it keeps coming up in conversations as well. And what are your thoughts on that? Are you seeing that actually play out within the industry, or is it a bit of fear-mongering at the moment?
No, I think it is playing out in the industry, and it certainly has played out in our business as well a little bit. But, there's so many issues here, and I know we don't have time to discuss it. Maybe there needs to be another podcast just focused on this, because I think we need to look at this from a holistic view. So leadership needs to step up and ask the question, why are people leaving my business? What do I need to change? Is it the environment? Is it the culture? Is it the business owner? What isn't keeping people? Is it stress levels, whatever? So, start with the leader first. Then we've got to look at the environments we're putting our people in, the technology we're using, the type of people we're employing. I think the employees have to take some responsibility for where they find themselves as well. Prior to COVID, there was a lot of conversation around technology and change, and there was a lot of resistance around change, and particularly around the technology piece as well. And then COVID hit, and we've all been forced down a path where we probably wouldn't have gone to at that pace had it been left to us. So I think employees need to take some responsibility of, this is where I am. How much have I contributed to this? And that's a whole other conversation. And I think the last piece around this is, if 23% of people are leaving our industry, we need to attract new people in from other industries. But, I really would like to see the REIs really step up around this and start talking about creating apprenticeship programs where we can bring people into jobs without them having the full qualification done prior. So let them do the qualification while they're working in the job, do the mix of in-house training and online training, whatever that looks like. Because if we have to wait till we have qualified people and it takes a number of weeks or months for all of that to happen, the crisis that we've got at the moment is just going to get worse and worse. So we kind of need to, as an industry, probably be a little bit more agile. They're my thoughts on it. They're probably, a little bit controversial, but I think we do need to take the bull by the horns on this issue a little bit.
I 100% agree, because I think as well, while it is a 23% figure, it's a growing industry. We're seeing more people that understand the value of rent rolls and the value of property management. We're seeing, investment properties. We need more investment properties because we're struggling again with that supply issue. And if you don't have property managers supporting that, we're going to be in some pretty dire straits in the next 3 to 5 years. And without that long-term vision, I think we really need to be planning towards 2030 here. So, if you're already struggling with talent in the property management space in 2022, it's going to be a pretty difficult road ahead, especially, with that rental vacancy crisis. I think those are the questions that we need to be looking at. None of this is occurring in a vacuum. I think we managed to circle the whole way back around our conversation today, Sadhna, but it's all that, it's the same issues, just presenting themselves in different ways. And, I think, we should be dedicating a whole nother episode to that idea of apprenticeships and I'm even thinking at the moment, maybe that's a roundtable discussion that we do have on that issue, because it is an issue and, the problem needs solving, and it needs solving sooner rather than later, or we're going to struggle even more. That 23% is going to blow out to a lot more like 50%.
I agree. And I think maybe, it'd be great. Maybe let's do a roundtable, Grace. Let's you and I host one and see where that leads to, because I think as an industry, we need to shake it up a little bit in so many different ways, but certainly in the recruitment piece, we need to shake it up. And I'm all for education and getting people qualified. But right now we need to get people qualified while they're doing the job.
A conversation to continue on another day. But Sadhna, thank you so much for the update. It's been great to just chat between ourselves for a day, something a little bit different.
Thank you, Grace. As always, wonderful to be your co-host. And I look forward to doing this all again next week.
Yeah, we'll see you all for another episode next week. Tune in wherever you are. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like or review us or reach out at any time. editor@realestatebusiness.com.au. If you think you have some thoughts that could go on a roundtable, let us know. As always, stay up to date with us on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram, as well as on realestatebusiness.com.au. Till next episode, stay safe and well. Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Some great insights there, some things to think about, especially on the preferential voting side of things. If you have any questions for the show, don't hesitate to reach out, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Make sure you are subscribed to smartpropertyinvestment.com.au if you haven't already, and stay up to date with us on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. As always, like or review us on whatever platform that you do use to listen to a podcast. We want to make sure that the content we're creating is relevant to you guys. So all feedback counts. That is all we have time for today. But until next episode, stay safe and well. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.